friends, welcome back to Tucked In Tuesday. Hope you all have had a really good week, and I hope you had a really nice weekend too. I hope you did something to spoil your moms on Mother's Day, because you know what? They all deserve it. Okay, so this week we are going to read for our picture book, Once Upon a Goat by Dan Richards, and the pictures are by Eric Barkley. And don't forget, if somebody writes the words, don't forget that that means they are also called the what? The author. And when it says pictures by, what does that mean? They're also called the what? The illustrator. I hope you got those two correct. Okay, here we go. Once Upon a Goat. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, a king and queen wished for a child. Yes, but where would we put it? Asked the king. Next to the vase on the hearth, naturally, replied the queen. Or beside the roses in the garden, the king added. Oh, yes, perfect, agreed the queen. One day, the fairy godmother stopped by for a visit. Tell me what you desire, she asked. We would like to start a family, said the king. We're not particular, said the queen. Glowing skin, bright eyes, and hair like the ocean waves would do. Said the fairy godmother. A boy would be great, added the king, but any kid will do. Of course, answered the fairy godmother. Look on your doorstep when the moon is full. At the next full moon, the king and queen ran to the door. Let it be a boy, said the king. With hair like ocean waves, said the queen. Do you think that's what they're going to get? Bah, said the goat. I wanted a baby, cried the queen. It's my fault, wailed the king. I said any kid would do, but I never meant this. Reluctantly, the king and the queen brought the little beast into their home. Look on the bright side, said the king. We can still hold it like a baby. It has a goatee, replied the queen. We won't need to change its diapers, said the queen. Ugh, that's disgusting, replied the king. At least it loves the royal roses, said the king. That's it. It has to go, commanded the queen. I guess we're better off now, said the queen sadly. A stand has to be taken for the roses, replied the king. Of course, said the king, or the queen. See the poor little goat down there? That night it rained hard. It's not our fault we were given a goat, said the queen. Not our fault at all, added the king. And yet, I wonder if we were right to send the little fellow away on such a blustery night. Oh, see him down there? He looks kind of sad, doesn't he? Clearly, he lacks a good sense to find shelter. I suppose he could come in just for a bit to dry off. He looks hungry, said the king. Maybe we could share a nibble or two from our meal. It's late. We can hardly send him away now, said the queen. He shall have to stay in our room for the night. It's only for the night, the king said. One night turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Looks like they're having fun with the little goat, doesn't it? Before long, the fairy godmother returned for a visit. How is everything? Wonderful, replied the king and queen. Perfect. May I see the child? Isn't he darling, said the king. A blessing, added the queen. You must be joking, said their fairy godmother. It's a goat. Yes, left in the doorstep when the moon was full, just like you said. Uh-oh, said the fairy godmother. I'll be back. Oh dear. This is for the best, really. Take a look. Here's the mama goat and the daddy goat. And look, what do they have there? Looks like a baby, doesn't it? And you can see in this side what's happening. You see the fairy godmother? She thinks this is for the best. She's taking the baby away from the goats. Does the baby look happy? See what happens. My sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding. I'll just return the goat and that will be that. Wait, said the queen. Perhaps there's an alternative, said the king at last. Yes, I see your point, said their fairy godmother. Take a look at these illustrations. Does that baby look happy? Look down here. Does anybody look happy? No. And you can see how the baby, she recognizes the goat, doesn't she? Like her family that had helped raise her. Aww. Okay, what do you see in the illustration? Can you tell what's happening? Who's coming? Well, said the king, not exactly the family we wished for. No, replied the queen, it's better. The end. Looks like everything turned out for the best, didn't it? I really like how at the end, I'll flip back to this last page, how they all decided to just live together. And even though the goats are going crazy in there, do you see how they're eating all the stuff? It looks like everybody's really happy, doesn't it? I agree. All right. That's the end of that story. Now it's time to move on to the next two chapters of Pirates Don't Wear Pink Sunglasses, where our Bailey School friends are still trying to decide if Captain Teach is a real pirate or not. What do you think? Do you think he's a pirate? Only one way to find out. All right, chapter 8 is called Sleep. Did you see the way Teach looked at us, Melody whispered to Eddie as they walked toward their cabins. It was late and the tall trees were swaying in the night breeze. What do you mean? Eddie asked. Teach knows we have the map, Liza said. Shh, Eddie sputtered. Why don't you just announce it to the whole world? Long-tongued Jack already did, Howie said. You guys worry too much, Eddie told them. Tomorrow morning before breakfast, we'll have a look around. Then we'll know for sure there isn't any treasure. See you tomorrow, Melody said as she and Liza went into the girls' cabin. Inside the boys' cabin, Eddie tossed and turned all night long. Once he was sure he had heard a wolf howling. Finally, when the first speck of sunlight popped through the dusty window, Eddie slugged Howie on the arm. Get up, he whispered. Leave me alone, Howie mumbled. It's still dark. The sun is shining. Do you want to waste all day sleeping? I thought you wanted to find out about the pirate's treasure. Howie moaned and pulled the covers over his head. Eddie shook Howie and then looked out the window. In the early morning light, he saw a figure moving toward their cabin. The figure had a bird on his shoulder. Howie, let's go. Teach is coming for us. Eddie threw the blankets off of his friend. Howie took a quick peek out the window and gulped. What do we do? Hurry, grab your clothes. Let's try the back window. Eddie ran to the back of the cabin and threw open the squeaky window. Sleepy kids from around the room complained about the noise and snuggled deeper into their covers. None of them noticed as Eddie and Howie slipped out the window. The boys tiptoed away from their cabin and stopped behind the girls' cabin. Then Eddie felt a cold hand on his shoulder. Eddie tackled the person behind him. It wasn't until they were both on the ground that he noticed the jet black pigtails. Ouch, Melody hissed. I think you bruised my arm. Eddie jumped up and brushed off the seat of his pants. What are you doing here? He whispered to Melody. Melody glared at Eddie. We saw Teach heading for the boys' cabin and thought you might need help. What are you doing here? Liza giggled from the shadows of a large hemlock tree. It looked like they were peeking in the girls' cabin. Eddie's face turned red. We were not. We were hiding from Teach. Howie helped Melody up. Eddie's right. We'd better get out of here before Teach finds us. I'm not scared of that mangy sea mongrel, Eddie snapped. You sure sounded scared when you saw him coming from the cabin, Howie said. And you jumped like a fish out of water when I touched you, Melody added. I don't like surprises, Eddie said, except for the kind in a treasure chest. That's what I'm going to hunt for. Eddie marched down the trail leading to the Red River. He didn't bother to look behind him. He knew his three friends would follow. Eddie stopped at the banks of the river and pulled out the sunglasses case. He was smoothing the wrinkles from the old map when Melody, Liza, and Howie stopped beside him. I don't think we were followed, Howie whispered. Liza shivered. Teach could come after us any minute. Eddie laughed. He won't have a chance. Coach Ellison will see to it that Teach is rowing down the river with the rest of the kids. That gives us plenty of time to look for this make-believe treasure. Melody pointed to the map. It'll be impossible to find the treasure. There's no X to mark the spot. The treasure hunters silently examined the map for several minutes. Then Liza sighed. Oh, Molly the Red must have liked these beautiful trees too. She even drew some on her map. Only those droopy trees on that little island, Eddie pointed out. Howie snapped his fingers. Maybe Molly didn't use an X to show where she hid the treasure. Eddie rolled his eyes. All professional pirates use an X. Not unless they draw trees instead, Melody said slowly and pointed. One tree has something written on it. Liza's eyes got big. Do you mean Molly buried her treasure under those trees? Exactly, Howie told them. What kind of pirate makes their maps so hard to figure out? Eddie snapped. A smart one, Melody said. Wait, I hear Coach Ellison calling us for breakfast, Howie said. Liza shivered. We better get back. I don't want Teach coming here to look for us. Howie nodded. And now we have to be just as smart as Molly the Red, or we'll end up as Teach's fish bait. Then you'd better leave this up to me, Eddie bragged, because I have a plan. All right, chapter 9 is called Soggy Sneakers. Captain Teach and Coach Ellison kept the kids so busy Eddie didn't have a chance to put his plan into action. Every morning for 3 days, the kids practiced rowing. In the afternoon, Coach Ellison took them on a hike, and then in the evening they'd practice rowing again and have a nature lesson. On the 4th day, Eddie decided it was time to try his plan. Eddie, Melody, Liza, and Howie hid under the dock until all of their friends had rowed away from shore. Captain Teach stood on the dock shouting directions. Heave to Bailey boaters! You'll be needing your muscles today. Faster, faster! Long-tongued Jack flew from a nearby tree and perched on Teach's shoulder. Teach straightened the pink sunglasses on his nose and looked into the shadows of the docks. The four hiding kids shrunk further into the shadows. Finally, Teach reached up, smoothed Jack's feathers, and whispered something to the bird. Jack flapped his wings and disappeared into the trees behind the four hiding treasures. Jack flapped his wings and disappeared into the trees behind the 4 hiding treasure hunters. Can we get out now? Liza whimpered. I'm soaking wet. We all are, Eddie snapped. We've been sitting in the water for an hour. Melody patted Liza's shoulder. Don't be so mean, Eddie. I'm beginning to think your plan is as wet as my sneakers. They're out of sight, Howie interrupted. Let's go. The kids climbed onto the dock and squeezed the water out of their clothes. Eddie left a trail of wet splotches as he jogged to a boat. Are you sure this is a good idea? Melody asked. You want to get to that island and look for the treasure, don't you? Eddie asked. But what if we capsize the boat? Liza cried. We'll all drown. Howie shook his head. We won't, as long as you remember everything Teach told us about rowing and we wear life jackets. Besides, Eddie's right. This is our only chance. While Teach is busy with the other kids, Melody agreed. Carefully, the 4 friends climbed in the boat and strapped on the faded orange life jackets. Howie untied the thick knot that held the boat to the dock, and they each grabbed a set of oars. Without a word, they dipped them into the water. The boat silently slid away from the dock. They were halfway to the small island when a shadow drifted over the boat. Eddie looked up just in time to see the green feathers diving for his head. It's that bird, he screamed, and he swatted at Jack with an oar, splashing water all over everyone. Stop that, Liza yelled. You're getting me wet again. Tell that bird to stop, Eddie told her. Long-tongued Jack landed on Eddie's head. Bird brain, bird brain. I'm going to pluck that bird bald, Eddie slapped at the bird, but Jack flapped away and Eddie ended up hitting himself on the head. I hope you knocked some sense into yourself, Melody giggled. It's not funny, Eddie snapped, but at least I scared that bag of feathers away. Liza nodded as they reached the shore to the little island. Maybe he'll leave us alone now. These trees aren't as little as the ones on the map, Eddie complained, looking at the huge towering willows as they pulled the boat onto the island. Of course not, Melody told him. Molly the Red made that map over 200 years ago. The trees were bound to grow a little since then. Look for the tree with something written on it, Liza suggested, like a map. Like on the map. This is a wild goose chase, Eddie muttered. Blackbeard probably found the treasure and spent it a long time ago. I don't think so, Howie said. Teach said that Molly's ship sank in 1718. That's the same year Blackbeard died. I bet Molly didn't even know he was dead when she wrote the note. Oh, how sad, Liza said. But it means the treasure is still here, Melody reminded them, so start looking. Eddie held up the map and pointed. The tree should be over there if this map isn't a fake. The kids studied every tree looking for some clue. All they found was smooth bark and a lot of mosquitoes. I feel like a beaver who can't make up his mind, Eddie complained. It's hopeless, Liza agreed, looking at the dozens of trees ahead of them. I think this is it, Melody called. It looks like something is carved on this tree trunk. Her friends ran over to see. Oh my gosh, Liza yelled. Molly was really here. This is where she left her treasure. Just then, A willow tree exploded in a flurry of leaves as Mr. Jenkins pushed through the branches. His beard was full of twigs and leaves, and he looked at them with his red eyes. "There you are," Mr. Jenkins growled. "I've been following your trail all morning. Why didn't you stay with the others?" "We just wanted to see what this island was like," Eddie told him. Mr. Jenkins looked around and spotted the carvings on the willow tree. He traced them over with his huge, hairy hand. "We didn't do that," Liza blurted. "Honest." Mr. Jenkins nodded. "The trees here depend on campers not to carve up their barks. And the rest of the Bailey kids were depending on you to help them in tomorrow's race. They're out there practicing right now. I'd better see you rowing like you've never rowed before." The four friends scrambled down the path and leaped into their boat. They were in such a hurry, none of them noticed a big bird flapping down the river towards a distant boat. And that is where we are going to stop for this week. Do you think they're going to find the treasure? I can't wait to find out. We'll find out next week when we finish up the story, okay? All right, friends, that's it for this week's edition of Tucked In Tuesday. So I hope your jammies are on, I hope your teeth are brushed, and I hope you are tucked in tight. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.